In May 2020, current UCL history students came together to reflect on their experiences at UCL History and to pass on their tips and advice to future cohorts of incoming undergraduates through a series of thematic panel discussions. The idea underpinning the project is for current students to help future cohorts to transition smoothly into life in our department and to create a stronger sense of community within the department. The project is led by Dr. Chloe Ireton and Dr. Patrick Lanchner and builds on the work that the two of them started with the History Society at the Induction weekend in 2019, where they hosted a panel discussion with students on the theme of being a historian at university. Building on the concept of hosting panel discussions with current students, over the course of 4 days in May 2020, current students and history tutors came together to reflect on the experience of studying history at UCL and life in London. This video is one of the 9 panel discussions that we produced for the project. Welcome to our 6th panel discussion with UCL history students. This is Panel Discussion 6, Welfare During Your Degree, Student Support, Personal Tutoring. This discussion forms part of our UCL History Undergraduate Induction Student Panel Discussions project.
Hi, my name is Jade Burroughes. I'm a third year history student here at UCL and I'm co-convener of this project alongside Chloe. My particular research interests are situated in gender history in modern Germany, particularly sexual violence in the Holocaust. I will be pursuing these interests further as of October at the University of Oxford, where I'll be doing a Masters in Modern European History, and I am also the current UCL History Society President.
Hi there, my name's Toby and I'm a third and final year history student at UCL. During my degree, I had a particular interest in religious relations in the early modern period, specialising in my final year on the Ottoman Empire. My extracurricular activities that I have interest in include working for the International Relations Society, being involved with the cross-country team and the Christian Union.
Hello, my name's Manisha Thind. I've just finished my 3rd year. However, I did a year abroad at UPenn, so I have 1 more year left. My history focus is around decolonisation, nationalism and civil rights movements. That said, I do a bit of everything. When I finish my degree, I either want to go into politics or management of some sort. However, I am still exploring my options.
Hi, my name's Hugo. I'm a first year history with a year abroad student. My main interests are history of Southeast Asia and world history, as well as history of international relations. And when I graduate, I'm hoping to work in either diplomacy or government.
Hi, my name is Rachel Cooklin. I'm a second year history student interested in early modern Britain, and I've also done some modules focusing on African decolonisation as well. I live at home in North London, and during my time at UCL have been involved with the university netball team and the Jewish Society.
Hi there, my name is Adria. I've just finished year 1 of UCL History, and when I graduate, I hope to go into politics.
Hi, my name is Ella Ticton-Smith and I'm a second year historian at UCL. My main interests are European social and cultural history, particularly France and Germany. And in terms of my extracurriculars, I do a lot of dance with UCL Dance Society. I'm on a committee for a student magazine at UCL, and I also do a lot of climate activism in London. After I graduate, I'm hoping to go somewhere into the field of environmental policy, campaigning or activism.
Hi, my name is Lisa. I'm a third year student going into my 4th year, as I did my year abroad at the University of British Columbia, the Vancouver campus. During my degree, my main interests are the history of Latin America and the history of drugs. Hopefully, after my undergraduate, I am going to do a master's in either history or migration policy.
Hi, my name's Isabel. I'm a second year history student with an emphasis on modern British history. I'm also a live-at-home student from North London, which is really why I wanted to be a part of this project to share my experiences for other live-at-home students coming to UCL this September. I'm also involved in the International Relations Society and the Medieval Society.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jon Chandler. I teach the undergraduate core courses, Writing History, Making History and Approaching History. These courses will introduce you to academic writing, research and scholarship, and they're designed to give you a really strong foundation for the rest of your studies. I also teach a course on the history of native North America that you can take in your 2nd or your 3rd year.
My name's Carrie Toohey and I'm the departmental tutor in the UCL History Department. My role is to oversee the academic progress and the welfare of all of our undergraduate students, and that includes coordinating our personal tutoring system. That's something that you'll hear more about in these induction videos. I studied history as an undergraduate and also as a master's student, and then I became a secondary school history teacher before I joined UCL in my current role. I really hope you find these videos useful, and I'm looking forward to helping you make the transition to university in September.
Hi, I'm Chloe Ayrton. I'm a lecturer here in the History Department at UCL, and I am leading, along with my colleague Dr. Patrick Lanchner, this really exciting project called UCL History Student Induction Video Resources, which really is part of the work that he and I are both doing in September to welcome in the new cohort of incoming undergraduate students. And we've been leading a series of panel discussions with current students to talk about various themes of life as a history student here at UCL. And you'll be seeing quite a lot of me over the course of these videos because I am chairing all of the discussions. We are really so delighted for all of you to be here with us today and to share your tips and experience onto the next generation. We have such an array of panelists from all across the UCL history experience, from first year to fourth year, as well as 2 staff members who spend most of their time, or a lot of their time, working on pastoral support and different forms of academic support for students. So we're really, really excited to hear from you, and thank you so much for giving up this time. I guess the first thing I wanted to talk about was just bearing in mind that it's first year students who are going to be watching these videos and who are going to be learning from you and from your experiences. If you can think back to your first year at UCL History, what were the issues that you faced from a pastoral point of view, not from an academic point of view, but in your personal lives or in terms of the sort of cultural experience of coming to UCL History? What were those experiences, the issues that you faced, and how did you deal with them? I know, Jade, you and I have really been talking about this for a long time, many, many days. It's come up again in the discussions, and you've really benefited from the pastoral support within the department. So perhaps you could start us off.
Yeah, so for me, I had a whole big anxiety about coming to university. So I come from a small town, state school, low income family, first generation. So coming to an elite university in London for me was quite the daunting experience. And I remember in first week, something as small as like the opening conversations you can have with fellow freshers can really make you kind of realise where you are, and it can be really scary. So I remember a lot of opening conversations had kind of the same few questions. It was kind of like, oh, where did you go to school? What do your parents do? Where did your parents go to school? And for me, I didn't go to a school with like a known name. My parents are unemployed, like they never went to university. So I think it was a bit of a culture shock to suddenly be surrounded by people whose parents were rich or who had been in the private school system, and it was quite the shock, and it took a while for me to kind of reconcile myself with being different in this pool of students. But you do soon find that you're not alone, because UCL has very diverse student population, and the likelihood of you finding someone that has very similar experiences to you is quite high. But it's just knowing where to look for support if you're feeling a bit isolated, I guess. But for me, yeah, I think just the shock of coming to uni and being surrounded by people, having been at school with people that were very, very similar to me in terms of like socioeconomic upbringing, I think it was really a shock to meet people from completely different backgrounds that I'd never been exposed to before.
I think as well, like Jon mentioned earlier, I think it's your first experience when you come to university of making friends as an adult. And that was something I just really didn't think about before I came. So I was like, oh yeah, like I had friends at school, obviously I'll make friends at uni. And then obviously you get to uni and you are meeting loads of people that you really like, but suddenly you're like, do I like these people? Like, what kind of people do I click with? Like, will I be friends with these people in 6 months' time? And I think like it's so easy to say, but definitely the best piece of advice is like you have different friends at different points in your life, and you shouldn't like just trust in the journey, because you will meet people at some point that you click with or that get you and you want to hang around with. And I think it's particularly difficult when it's a time in your life as well, when you've got lots of other anxieties, like, is everyone else like working at a higher standard than me? Are other people more settled? Are they like, should I be enjoying university more? And I think with social media as well, you're like comparing your experience with other friends from home's experiences at their universities and thinking, oh no, like, should I have gone to like Edinburgh or Bath or like somewhere else? And I think honestly, you've just got to like stick with your gut and like just see how things pan out, because like no matter how many times people say it to you, it's just so true that like whatever happens, things always just turn out better than they seem and how they feel.
I completely agree with the points that have been made, and it's kind of very similar to Jade. I went to a state school in North London which had 50 people in my sixth form, and to go from your learning with 50 people to 300 people, that is extremely daunting, and something that I know I really struggled with, and it really affected my confidence, and then actually affected the quality of my work was the competitiveness that I felt when I came into university, especially because I think Jade said it in a previous panel, is when you feel that you're at elite university, you have to be elite, but you don't, because everything is a learning curve. And there's a reason that the first year of a history degree doesn't matter that much, because you're not going to be able to walk into UCL and be able to do your first essay like it's going to be an amazing first. It's not, and it's all a learning curve. But I think that was something I really struggled with, and that was a complete shock. And coming from London, I didn't expect to have a culture shock, but actually that competitive environment was really daunting, and that is something I wish I'd known before, to be able to prepare myself about and just be ready to encounter that.
I'm from London, and I'm obviously I didn't come from a different city. I didn't come from a small town or anything, and there are a lot of people who will just come from London, because London is the hub of, it's where the biggest concentration of people are in this country, and even these people who live in London will think, oh, this culture shock, so-called culture shock, it won't impact me because I know London, I know the city, I know the life, the big high buildings aren't going to intimidate me. But it's not true. You might think Euston like the back of your hand, which I thought I did. I mean, at least geographically. I think you realise that you don't, even geographically. And it's all because of this melange of different cultures all in one. We haven't yet talked about the academic difficulties, but we'll come on to that. And that is also part of a culture shock, which then impacts on your social life, really, as you'll see.
Well, I'm an international student, so like I kind of had, before coming to UCL, I was quite scared about how I would be able to like integrate in a foreign country and in a foreign university. But like the kind of student body and the academic body in UCL is so diverse, and there's so many different types of people that I would say like it's really easy to find a group of people who you can like really relate with and feel good with. So I think like before going to university, you shouldn't be scared at all about making friends, because you will really easily, it's quite easy to actually find your group and people that suit you.
I wonder, Carrie, what your thoughts are, because obviously you spend a huge amount of time with first year students and doing the induction program and really being such an important port of call for so many students. In terms of the issues that first year students face, the struggles they might face, or the sort of more negative issues, do you think that we've kind of covered everything, or are there other issues that you've encountered that students might face? And one of the things that we've been talking a lot about over the last few days is about allowing new students to realize or to know that they aren't alone when they go through these things. And there's a lot of these experiences are universal, and many of the panelists in our discussions this morning were talking about how they didn't know that anyone else was also going through these kinds of experiences. And perhaps we can talk a little bit about sort of destigmatizing this. But I'm just wondering, Carrie, from your really extensive experience, what your sense is of issues first year students might also face.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to hear everyone's reflections. I think a lot of the time, lots of the first year students that I talk to are used to coming from schools where they felt really comfortable. Students often kind of say, I felt I was a big fish in a small pond at my school, and I was the person that was very successful. I was very confident. Everybody looked to me as a role model. I knew what I was doing. I knew all my teachers. I knew everyone. And I think the contrast when you come to university, you suddenly feel very small, very insignificant. I think Ella said you don't feel elite at all. And it's making that adjustment, and at the same time your support network falls away, the support network that you're used to. Maybe you've moved away from home, you don't have your friends around you, you don't have familiar teachers, and then all of these things that would be daunting in any circumstances become so much bigger and so much more difficult to deal with. So I think I would be really interested to hear from our students how you kind of rebuilt that support network. So how did you kind of reach out to people? Did you reach out to fellow students? Did you kind of make a connection with a personal tutor or somebody who was teaching you? How did you start to rebuild that support network that I hope that all of you now further down your degrees would feel that you have? Because I think bridging that gap and kind of starting again is really not easy.
Well, living I was living in student halls. I think like in student halls, a lot of your support network comes from the people you live with, because all of us, I think, like have left home. Some of us come from another country, and so we're really like by ourselves in this big city. So I think like in student halls, you can really use like the other people with who you are to like build a support system, because you're all in the same situation in the end. And also personally for me, my transition mentor was a really good person with whom I could like talk to about the issues during first term. Because we would be meeting every week, and it was somebody who I could communicate with it really easily, and who always like tried to find solutions. So I would say also, like, if you have a good transition mentor, don't hesitate to talk with them, because they can really help you, because they've probably been in the same situation, or they know somebody that's been in the same situation. So yeah.
So for me, my halls were quite big, and they were intercollegiate. So for me, I quite struggled to make friends in my halls. So I found an anchor, so to speak, elsewhere. So my personal tutor was Eleanor, who is now head of department. She was really brilliant with me in my first few weeks and throughout my 3 years here. Because she was quite aware. The good thing about having a personal tutor for 3 years is they come to know you very, very well, and they come to know what your anxieties are and what your worries are. And for me, coming from the background that I did, I had a massive case of imposter syndrome when I first came to UCL. Like, I didn't think I belonged there. I felt very out of place. Everyone seemed to be from better backgrounds from me. They seemed to have gone to really big schools. Benefited from tutoring for most of their life, stuff like that. And I just felt really underprepared. But having Eleanor there to talk through and say, you're not alone in this, there are other students like you, whether you've met them yet is a different issue, was like a really reassuring like source of comfort for me. And she also directed me towards like broader support systems at UCL, so psychological services, who have helped me massively throughout my time here. So I've benefited from therapy all 3 years that I've been here, which has been a massive help and another source of support. And the university sorts it all out for you, so it's not like you have to go out of your way to get this support. There are people who can organise it for you. And yeah, I'd just say your personal tutor is really helpful in opening up those avenues to like broader support and giving you advice on your issues you're struggling with, because they've heard it all before, basically, and they know exactly what to do.
So I had the way that religious festivals fell the year I started university. My first week of university was actually, I think, week 2 or 3 of term, and I ended up, Carrie gave me the week's worth of induction lectures in 20 minutes in her office, and that was my start to university life. So I'd met no one at Induction. I didn't know my transition mentor, my academic mentor, nothing. I didn't know anything. But I found that because of that, I spent a lot of first term being like, I'm so out of my depth, I don't know what's going on. And it took me quite a while to be like, actually, nobody really knows what's flying at all, ever. And you've just got to, half of it is faking it until you're making it. And half of it is speaking to people. And then you realize that actually your friends also don't really know what's going on, and supporting each other through that. I also found like talking to people before seminars, regardless of what year of study people are in, everyone I've met has been so friendly. And it's also, even if they don't end up being your best friend, it's a friendly face in a seminar, someone to chat to and ask for help. And that's also really reassuring.
I'd like to say that, like, we've talked a lot about, when you're at school, at your high school, and you're a big name on campus, and then you go to being the opposite. There are also some like positives of transitioning, and I think that one of the main things I find very cool is this bridge you suddenly have between your social life and academics. And academia. So, for example, like at your old school, you might have been the only guy who, this may not be the case, but you may be the only person who was interested in, say, politics or economics or physics or whatever. This is the history department. By the way, this applies to anyone entering uni, and you were so-called the nerd who read up and this stuff. When you go to uni, you find that. But when you were at high school, you very much kept your academia, your research in one place in your life, and then your social life completely another place in your life. And when you go to uni, you find that there's a bridge between those two things. That you can suddenly, on nights out, you might start talking about the, political philosophy, whatever you like, with your closest friends, and that's great. And it's not just something you can do with your friends, like with your tutors. You don't just have to talk about your essays with them. I haven't seen my tutor that much this year, but one of the things I remember very clearly him telling me is like, I told him I like politics, and he said, anytime you want to just talk about politics, I'm free. I mean, obviously, don't take that to the letter. I can't just walk in on him whenever he wants, but it's really reassuring to know that you have people around your life that are interested in the same thing that you are.
I would really echo that, actually, because I've always tried to make an effort to really get to know my personal tutor and the lecturers that are teaching me that year, and it's always worked out really well, and that I've built a really solid relationship, that I knew that I had people who I could go to, not just for academic things but personal things. So when I was going through a bit of a rough time earlier this year, I went to see my personal tutor, and he gave me 4 books on meditation that had helped him, and he was like, you have to take these, go and read them. And I thought that was such a nice gesture. And also just reaching out to other students who you don't even know necessarily. I think I quite often forget that this happened, but in my first week of university, I was in the library and I was so stressed, and I thought as soon as you walk into the library, everyone would just single you out as a first year who doesn't know how the library works and is just a massive loser. And this girl came up to me who I think was in her 3rd year, and she was doing German and French, so obviously not even my degree. And she made me add her on Facebook and showed me around the library and was like, if you ever need anything, just message me. And I never got in contact with her in the end because, university happened. But I thought that was so nice. And I think it's ironic now that I sit in the library as a 2nd year and I'm scared of all the 1st years. And I'm like, oh my God, they're so cool. They're so put together. So honestly, no one's judging you. No one can tell what year you are from the way you look. And so many people will just be happy to help you.
Yeah, I completely agree with what everyone said. I especially agree with what Jade said. In terms of university accommodation, I also lived in a particular accommodation where I did not have many friends in that accommodation. So I lived in John Dodgson Halls, and loads of the people in that accommodation tended to be older, and they tended to be people that were here on a year abroad or a semester abroad. So it was just not very many first years, and there was maybe one person from my course there. So what I would say is, if you feel a bit alone where you're living or wherever it is, there's so many people in UCL, there's so many societies that you can be part of. You have your entire history cohort to be friends with, and if you are finding it just tough to find friends or make friends, again, just talk to, like what everyone has said, talk to your personal tutor, talk to Carrie, talk to essentially even any of your lecturers or any of your subject teachers as well. Everyone's just super helpful.
Yeah, I just wanted to raise a point because I think Rachel reminded me of it, that how important support networks and community anchors are when we arrive at university. And for lots of people from a faith background, that is something that brings them tremendous solace and importance. And one of the things I really benefited from in my first year of university was the chaplaincy spaces, the meditation rooms, the quiet spaces that are provided for people of all faith backgrounds, and being able to have that anchor of a support network of people I could reach out to and feel welcomed by, and have space to kind of quiet down from the busyness and the rush of academic life, was a tremendous benefit for my own mental health and spiritual health throughout that first year. And I think I didn't realize it early enough. And I wish I'd had people say, hey, you can reach out to these quiet spaces. Of course, the mental health support network is there, and it's to be accessed as well, but also people's spiritual health that can take a bit of a beating when coming to quite a competitive academic environment too, is something that I certainly neglected.
That's so interesting, Toby, and I'm so glad you brought it up because it's such an important issue for so many students. To feel there are spaces to develop networks and community around their faith, and to take quiet spaces to reflect and think on these things. And I guess I wanted to sort of move us in a little bit to thinking about these sort of structures available within the university, whether it's in our department, thinking about what exactly is a personal tutor, what do they do, why do you go and see them, what you've all, what kind of relationship you've all had, and the broader types of services available to support students. But before we went into that, I wanted to touch a little bit on one of the issues that hasn't come up at all, but it's come up in so many of our discussions previously, is this notion of imposter syndrome. And I think a lot of us, when we think about pastoral life, right, entering into our first term, first week of university, it's come up in every single discussion that we've had. And we've always said, oh, we'll talk about it when we get to the pastoral moment, the pastoral panel. And so I wonder if we could talk a little bit about what exactly is imposter syndrome, what's it caused by, and how have you worked to get over it, as you've gone through the department, or perhaps you're still suffering from it, because it is something that is long lasting. And I can say that it comes in my own life. The academics are famous for suffering from imposter syndrome, right? And it doesn't go away. So I'm just interested to hear a little bit about what your experience has been with that particular issue before we move in to talking about the structures available.
Was that an echo? Okay. Imposter syndrome for me, it's this, I get like a little voice in my head that kind of says, oh, are you sure you belong here? It's like a niggling doubt in my head. And I think it comes a lot from for me personally, the fact that I'm first generation, so no one in my family has ever been to university before. And that's quite an isolating experience in that I've never had role models to rely on, academically at least, at all. Like my entire family, no one's ever pursued higher education of any form. So I was first to sit A-levels, I was the first to go to university, and having that lack of inspiration, I guess, was quite scary because I didn't have anyone to fall back on in my immediate family to seek advice from. And coming to a university like UCL that's very elite and is very prestigious and has a name, and being surrounded by people that I felt were way more prepared for this transition than me was terrifying. In terms of how I've started, I mean, I still haven't fully nipped it in the bud. I still struggle with it quite a lot. But I think what helped was in first year, I think we've spoken about it in another panel in depth, the transition modules we have in first year, so writing, making and approaching history, basically provides you with a toolkit where if you have, we basically start from scratch and everyone's on a level playing field where we're all taught how to write an essay, we're all taught how to use sources, we're all taught how to navigate historiography from scratch. So I didn't feel as much as at a disadvantage as I thought I was going to. despite other people in my classes having done all of these skills, like having honed in all these skills a lot earlier than me. I mean, it is still a struggle, and it's something that I think people combat throughout all of their years at uni and probably beyond. But I think an important thing to realise is that we're all at the same university. Like, we all worked hard to get in. We all got similar grades, and that means you're more than capable of thriving. And I think actually the time people spend comparing themselves to other people is time they could spend focusing on themselves. And for me, at least, when I stopped comparing myself to other people and actually just focused on my work and like figuring out what I wanted to do with my life and what I was passionate about in history and what I really enjoyed, that was when I started doing better in my degree and actually enjoying it, instead of it just being a mountain of stress for me.
I completely agree. And I think something that I really found coming from a state school, again, I felt like I didn't have the skills to be able to do what was expected of me, and that almost I couldn't do it because I didn't have that more established education. And something that definitely manifested in itself is in first year, you have 2 main essays to do by the end of the year. And I believe that I had to work hard to the point that I was reading every single scrap of research, every single article and blurb and everything that I could find on it. And actually, someone said something to me. It was like, I was working too hard, but I actually wasn't working smart. And I ended up that I had so much information in my head. I had so much stuff that I was completely overstressed. I was so anxious constantly. And my essays didn't even do very well because I had overworked myself to the point that all potential had been lost. And I was kind of on a downward trajectory. And I think I kind of knew how much I struggled in my first year. And when I went into second year, I knew this, and it was kind of almost of, again, all right, you read what you have to read. And it was kind of, you block out the thought that I have to work harder because of my education. And instead, you actually just start to learn from it. And I've seen a really big increase in my grades because of getting out of that mindset of, well, I have to work harder now because I wasn't prepared as much. And I think kind of, like Joe said, stepping away from that is really difficult, but it is a process and it is important.
That's so interesting. It's so fascinating to hear about how we've all dealt with imposter syndrome. I wonder, Ella, you and I have been talking about this over the last couple of days. What are your thoughts?
I think it's also true that sort of imposter syndrome feelings, or like feelings of anxiety about work, can come up like at any point in your degree for whatever reason. And so I think for me, like, I was quite lucky that I came from a school which prepared me quite well for undergraduate study, I think. But in a way, like, that sort of come back to hit me a little bit in second year when I sort of thought, you know, I'm in second year at university, I've had this like quite privileged upbringing, I should be performing better than I am. Like, why am I not doing even better? Because I've had this background, I should be making use of it, and I should be doing more work, and I should be balancing like a job and my work, and like, which was something I didn't really experience in first year. I was just too busy trying to settle into London. And suddenly I was putting so much pressure on myself to sort of be, like everyone said, like be elite, particularly because I felt I had this pressure to do it because I'd been able to succeed a lot because of my socioeconomic circumstances. And actually, I think, again, it just comes from not comparing yourself to others and doing what's best for you. And like, so much of that stress comes from being like, oh my goodness, everyone else knows exactly what they're doing. They're not stressed at all. They've written all their essays in like a week and they're totally fine about it. And meanwhile, I have to start writing 3 months beforehand because I get so anxious. And like, honestly, you should just do what works for you, and no one's judging you because everyone just kind of goes on their own path.
Just like after listening to everybody about I guess, I don't know, suffering with or suffering from imposter syndrome, I just realised that I also do, and I've just never noticed it. I guess with me, it's always been like this feeling of just being slightly uncomfortable, but you just don't know why. But what's really nice is to know that there's just so many of us that feel like this, and it's just so much more comforting just knowing how many people do feel like that they are an imposter in some way or another. So I just think it's just really important to talk to other people about it.
Yeah, I think this is a really good point, Manisha, that bringing it out makes us see that we're not unique, right? And we're not the only ones who have these experiences or difficulties or issues we face. I wonder, Rachel, what's your sense of this issue? Have you faced it, and how have you come?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is also people were talking about confidence and just jumping into opportunities. That you go from school, which is such a protected, set environment, to the freedom of university, where it's amazing, but it's also absolutely terrifying because suddenly you have all this time, and if you don't go to a seminar, it's really like it's not great for your attendance, but you'll catch up the notes. Like you're suddenly so much more in control that you have to take those steps to be like, okay, maybe I'll contribute. Also, I had a tutor in first year who used to pick on us to be like, learn our names really quickly, which was really nice, but then would be like, Rachel, what do you think? Which, if you were underprepared, and half the time is absolutely terrifying. But I did find that it meant in other seminars I was more confident of contributing because they had forced me out of my comfort zone of silence and just listening, and then actually going from that to contributing to the academic study was like a big thing until you realize you're like, hang on a minute, I'm actually doing it, like, and it's going okay. And then you from these steps of that require huge confidence, you do feel more comfortable eventually.
I really love that, Rachel. It's come up a few times in our discussions, thinking about what was the moment when you developed the confidence to say something in a seminar, right? And sort of, and it's interesting to think about a tutor actually helping you in some way, you know, through just asking you what your thoughts are. But obviously, it's so related to this sense of imposter syndrome. And I guess we really don't have a huge amount of time, but I think for both Jade and I have been talking about this over the last few days. It's been really important to think about the kind of structures available in the department. And obviously, when you all arrive, you're assigned to a personal tutor who will stay with you for 3 years and who you meet once a term or more regularly if need be to talk about any issues you're facing, really, and to support you in your pastoral and academic lives. And of course, there's Carrie, who many of you spend a lot of time with as well. And there's all these broader structures in the university, which we're not going to go over right now. But I just want to sort of hear from you a little bit about what's your relationship been to those structural sort of people, I guess, people in departments that are in place to support you in your pastoral lives. And I know, Ella, you've this year really had a lot to do with your personal tutor. So perhaps you might want to talk us through your experiences or perspectives. We can't hear you, Ella.
Sorry. I think it's really important to remember again that, like, just because you haven't dealt with a mental health issue or something similar before coming to uni, and that's not to say that it might be something you come up against when you arrive. And so it's really important from the offset just to be like broadly aware of the support available. And so, like, your personal tutor is no matter your relationship with them throughout the course of your degree, you really can just go in any time and be like, this is what's happening. And like this year, I am having not really struggled with sort of like anxiety or depression or anything before coming to university, suddenly found like a lot of these things were bothering me. And I think because I felt I was in second year and I should sort of have myself together by this point, and, you know, I didn't want to like burden my personal tutor because I was like, oh, it's a busy time of year. I really let it go a long time before I went to see someone about it. And as soon as I went, I was like, oh my goodness, I should have come like 4 weeks ago and so much of this would have been avoided. And I think as well, like, you should never be afraid to take measures like extenuating circumstances or getting reasonable adjustments, so getting more time for extensions like on a regular basis, or even interrupting your studies, which is what I ended up doing if you think it's what's best for you. And like with interrupting, so I ended up taking a break out of my studies in February this year, and I'm going to redo second year in September. And like, you know, it was for a combination of factors, including just me choosing modules that were blatantly not suited to my interests. Oops. But I think so many people told me, they were like, oh no, you should just like keep pushing and like get over it. And like, you know, university, like, it's so short, you may as well just keep going. And actually it was, you know, people in the department and my friends who were like, you know, it's like a once in a lifetime experience being at uni. And if you feel that you're not making the most of it, then like it's totally okay to take time out. And I for the support from my personal tutor and from the departmental tutor, hey Carrie, who were just so helpful, and they were like, yeah, just take time out, do what you want. And the paperwork was so easy, and like honestly, I thought it was going to be such a mammoth of a process, but I filled in like 2 forms and now I'm repeating my year, and I'm very happy I did because it means more time at UCL. So yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, with like the department, like, just to reiterate, the department is so supportive. As I was saying earlier, my personal tutor was a really big anchor for me when I first came here, and she, although you're supposed to meet your personal tutor like on intervals each term, so like usually a meeting each term at the end of the term to check how you've been doing, you can arrange to have more regular meetings with them. So for the whole of first term and first year, I had a weekly meeting with Eleanor, my personal tutor, because I was really struggling with the transition, and I just needed something like stable there to have every week, someone I could go to and just chat to if I'd had something that really stressed me out or I was worried about. And that was a real like breath of fresh air for me, because I came from school worrying that, you know, that academics wouldn't have time to take time aside and sit and just talk about our personal problems with us. And I think that's an important thing to bring up, that your personal tutor isn't just there for academic support, they're also very interested in your personal well-being, and I think the two are very interlinked throughout university. So yeah, as Ella was saying, completely exploit those resources as early on. Even if you don't think you're going to make use of them, it's useful to have that relationship there in case you ever need to fall back on it.
And linked to what Jade was just saying, that so personally I didn't end up seeing my personal tutor so often, but I also found support in, I had one tutor for lots of modules this year, and I found that I'd go to them for support and they were really helpful. So if for whatever reason your personal tutor doesn't turn out to be your first point of call, any member of staff in the department is there to help as well.
I really like both of what you're saying, and I think this issue of like finding the anchor, and that everybody who works in the history department cares for your well-being and wants to know how you are and takes a real personal interest in you. Or perhaps Carrie might want to come in here, because obviously, you know, this is something that you work on all the time and see many things.
Yeah, I suppose reflecting on what everyone's been saying, I'd say something about how you need to behave as a student when you need support. That might be different from how you've behaved in the past. So I think, you know, when Ella is saying that she wished she'd said something sooner and, you know, that she hadn't left it so long, I think it's really difficult when you come to university, or it can be difficult because you don't have the regular contact with that support network that we were talking about earlier on that you might be used to. So when you're at school, you might have a form tutor or class teachers who see you so regularly that you just wouldn't be able to get away with not telling them if something was wrong, because you wouldn't be saying anything in class, or you wouldn't be handing in your homework, or you'd just be a bit grumpy. And that kind of regular contact with people who know you well doesn't happen in quite the same way at university. So I think there's a real shift in the way that you have to behave when you're struggling. And I'm certainly not saying it's easy. It's really difficult to be proactive in reaching out for support. But I hope that what all of the student experiences that we've heard about shows you is that when you do reach out for support, the reaction you get is positive, and that there is lots of support for whatever kind of problem you might be having from lots of different places, whether it's peer support from students, support within the department, from personal tutors, or from me, or from your module tutors, but then also outside of the department from the central UCL kind of support services, where there are professional people who are qualified in mental health support, people who can support you with finances or whatever the difficulty happens to be. So that the proactivity, I think, can be the really difficult thing. You really have to ask for support when you need it, because of the way that university is structured. It means that that's not necessarily going to get picked up.
I just wanted to add on to that point, that, yeah, like Carrie's saying, it's 100% necessary to be proactive and seek help where you need it. But also in most cases, once you've done that initial like reaching out, the process is actually quite simple. So like Ella was saying with the paperwork, I found I had that experience with both my statement of reasonable adjustments and with mental health services. So it was actually surprisingly easy with receiving therapy through UCL. So basically what happens is you go for an assessment with psychological services. They sit you down for half an hour and you just have a chat about what struggles you're going through, like what's really getting to you. They put you on a waiting list and then they assign you to a therapist in most cases. Therapy is like the big thing that they offer. They can do either in person or over the phone as well. So it's really like caters to your needs. And I just think, yeah, all of that was taken care of for me. I just got a string of emails like keeping me updated. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, well, you've got an appointment next week with, you know, Dr. So-and-so, be there at this time. And it was so simple, very surprisingly so. And it was a big weight off my shoulders because I thought I'd have to fill out all this complicated paperwork and go for more assessments and stuff like that. So yeah, like Carrie was saying, I think it's really important to reach out because once you do, a lot of the time the process is taken away, like it's sorted out for you and it's quite streamlined and quite simple. So yeah.
I think this is such an important thing to discuss and to have heard all of our views on because, you know, it's so important to know that we as the department staff are available and willing and have structures in place to support all of you going through, you know, all of the different things, but also for new students to realize that they are not going through something that no one else has ever experienced and that actually it's more common than not, you know, for us as personal tutors, for us to have a large number of students experiencing different forms of crises caused by very different things at any given time. And a lot of us, you know, it's not uncommon to set up, for example, tailored meeting times to help students. I've got some who I meet with regularly to make sure they're keeping up with their writing work because that's something they struggled with. Or, you know, in Jade's case, just with helping into that transition into university with her personal tutor. And, you know, it may not be your personal tutor you end up doing that with, but it could be an academic staff member. I meet a lot of students who are in my seminars who, for example, want to work on issues like getting used to contributing to class, right? Students who really struggle to speak in class, so we meet to sort of prepare how they're going to contribute. And these sort of one-on-one meetings or smaller group tutorials are available throughout the UCL History sort of system. And I think just communicating your needs, right? So if you know that you suffered from a crisis, a mental health crisis, knowing, you know, reaching out to a person who's saying, okay, I need to make sure that you know what's going on and you can keep an eye on me. You know, and we're more than sort of willing to sort of work and help students through that. So I'm really glad we've kind of had this discussion, you know, between us and sort of collected our experiences on this matter. I think we're sort of running out of time right now, unless anybody would like to sort of contribute anything else about this particular issue before we move on. I'm not seeing any hands up. So I just wanted to thank you all so much for being with us today and sharing really extremely valuable experiences and perspectives. And I think this is one of the panels that will hopefully, or I'm sure will be of most value to new students. And, you know, your legacy is going to, especially those of you who are graduating, going to really stay with the academic community in this department and hopefully make a whole generations of incoming cohorts feel much more relaxed about their transition into campus. And, you know, we're thinking we're probably going to be watching some of these videos and then doing Q&As later on, you know, in the induction later in the year. And I can really see how this is going to be very, very powerful and important to help them with that transition in. So I just want to thank you all very much for your generosity and time in being with us here today.